The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the snow-covered plains where the Lakota tribe made their home. Winter had wrapped its icy fingers around the land, bringing frigid winds and piles of white powder that seemed to stretch endlessly. The harsh conditions made survival difficult, as food became scarce and each day was a fight against the cold. The smoke from small fires curled up into the freezing air, serving as reminders of warmth amidst the biting chill. It was during this bitter season that settlers arrived, driven by dreams of a new life. They trudged through the snow, bundled in heavy coats but still feeling the bite of winter. Tensions simmered between the newcomers and the Lakota people who had lived on this land for generations. The settlers saw the vast landscapes as opportunities for farms and towns, while the Lakota viewed it as their sacred territory, filled with ancestral connections. As both groups navigated their daily lives, misunderstandings grew. The settlers often judged the Lakota way of life as strange or uncivilized, while the Lakota questioned the settlers' motives and ways. This climate of mistrust set the stage for a dramatic encounter that would blur lines between heroism and accusation. Unbeknownst to both sides, their stories were about to intertwine in a way that would forever change their perspectives on each other and what it meant to be human in such a harsh world. Amid the swirling snow and biting winds, a young Lakota boy named Tay was out gathering firewood. He had learned from his elders the importance of helping others, especially during tough times like this. As he trudged through the deep drifts, he spotted a figure lying motionless in the snow. Curiosity turned to alarm as he realized it was a nun, her face pale and her hands frostbitten. Without hesitation, Tay raced toward her, heart pounding with both fear and determination. He remembered the stories told around the fire about bravery and compassion, how true heroes help those in need, regardless of their background. Kneeling beside her, he could see that she was struggling to stay warm. Tay quickly wrapped her in his own coat, feeling the warmth of his body transfer to her. With great effort, he lifted her onto his back and began the long trek back to his village, each step heavy with the weight of responsibility. As he moved, he whispered words of encouragement to her, hoping she could hear him amidst the howling wind. Tay's actions were not just about saving a life, they reflected the values of his people, respect for all living beings and a deep sense of community. When they finally reached the fire in his village, Tay laid her down gently beside it. The warmth enveloped them both, but it was Tay's kindness that truly shone through, a beacon of hope in a time filled with uncertainty and fear. Sister Agnes had always felt a calling to help those in need. Growing up in a bustling city far from the snowy plains of the Dakota Territory, she had trained as a nun with the hope of spreading care and compassion. When she heard stories about settlers facing hardships in the West, she volunteered to join a group headed to assist them. Sister Agnes believed her mission was to bring not only supplies but also faith to those who struggled. Her journey was long and filled with challenges, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She felt driven to share her beliefs while helping the settlers establish their new lives. As she arrived in the area, she quickly noticed the tensions between the settler community and the Lakota tribe. Despite this, Sister Agnes was determined to connect with the Lakota people, believing that love could bridge cultural divides. She often wandered near their camps, offering food and supplies, hoping that her actions would foster goodwill. Unfortunately, not all settlers shared her vision, they viewed her interactions with suspicion and fear. Some accused her of being too close to the Pagan Lakota, failing to understand her true intentions. As winter set in, Sister Agnes's resolve only grew stronger, despite facing criticism. She believed that by helping everyone, she could make a difference. However, when she found herself lost in the snow, frostbitten and alone, it was not a fellow settler who came to her aid but young Tay, a Lakota boy whose bravery would challenge everything she thought about this new world. Word spread quickly through the settler community about Sister Agnes's rescue by the Lakota boy, Tay. Instead of feeling relief or gratitude, many settlers reacted with suspicion and fear. They gathered around their fires, sharing hushed whispers that echoed their worries about the dark influence they believed surrounded the Lakota tribe. Some claimed that helping a pagan was akin to inviting trouble into their lives. These settlers held tightly onto superstitions that had grown in the shadows of their fears. They spoke of omens and signs in nature, convinced that any connection with the Lakota meant risking their own safety and well-being. To them, the sight of Sister Agnes being saved by a Lakota boy felt like a warning from the universe, a sign that something sinister was at play. In their minds, Tay's act of kindness seemed to challenge their beliefs, as if it blurred the lines between good and evil. With every passing day, tensions mounted. Some settlers began to speak of raising a cross as a symbol of protection against what they perceived as dark forces. They thought that by erecting this cross, they could ward off any bad luck and reinforce their faith against the unknown. The growing tension left both sides on edge. While Sister Agnes sought understanding and compassion, the settlers' fears festered into anger and distrust. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty, setting the stage for conflict rooted deeply in misunderstanding and cultural differences, challenges that would take time and courage to overcome. As the settlers gathered around their fires one frigid evening, the discussions turned heated. Fueled by fear and superstition, they decided that a cross should be erected as a protective symbol against what they believed to be dark pagan influences from the Lakota tribe. They saw this act as a way to reaffirm their faith and shield themselves from the perceived dangers of the wild. The next day, several settlers set out to construct the cross. It towered high, made from sturdy logs they had gathered, its weathered surface adorned with simple carvings that represented their prayers for safety. As they worked, their voices raised in song echoed across the frozen landscape. To them, this was not just a structure, it was a declaration of their beliefs and an assertion of their identity in a land filled with uncertainty. However, this act of defiance reflected a profound misunderstanding of Lakota culture. The settlers failed to recognize that the land was sacred to the Lakota people, who held deep spiritual connections to nature and its elements. Instead of fostering peace and understanding, the cross became a divisive symbol, further entrenching feelings of resentment on both sides. As word spread among the Lakota about the newly erected cross, many felt angered and disrespected. What was meant to be a sign of protection for the settlers only served to deepen the cultural rift. With tensions rising, it became clear that both groups needed to confront their misunderstandings before any hope for reconciliation could emerge. The cultural clash between the Lakota spirituality and settler Christianity lay at the heart of the rising tensions. For the Lakota, their beliefs were deeply intertwined with the land and nature. They viewed every hill, tree, and river as sacred, believing that spirits resided in all aspects of life. Their practices revolved around reverence for these elements and the interconnectedness of all living things. This connection fostered a sense of community and respect that guided their actions, including Tay's heroic rescue of Sister Agnes. In contrast, the settlers' Christian beliefs centered on a more individualistic approach to faith. They worshipped a single God and viewed their mission as one of salvation, often seeing themselves as chosen to spread their values. This mindset led them to misunderstand the Lakota's way of life, viewing it through a lens steeped in fear and superstition. To them, anything different was perceived as a threat. They labeled the Lakota's spiritual practices as dark or pagan. When Sister Agnes was rescued by Tay, the settlers interpreted this event through their own fears rather than understanding its significance within Lakota culture. The raising of the cross became a misguided attempt to assert dominance over what they believed was an encroaching darkness, failing to acknowledge that compassion had already bridged gaps between two worlds. As both groups remained entrenched in their beliefs, dialogue grew nearly impossible. The events unfolding highlighted not just a clash of cultures but also an urgent need for empathy, a recognition that different perspectives could coexist without judgment or hostility. As Tay sat by the fire in his village, he reflected on the events that had unfolded. He felt a mix of pride and confusion about his actions. Rescuing Sister Agnes had been a moment of instinct driven by the teachings of his elders, who always emphasized the importance of compassion and helping those in need. Yet now, he wondered how this act would be viewed by both his people and the settlers. Tay could sense the tension in the air, thick like the winter snow that surrounded them. The settlers' fear of his culture made him uneasy. He recalled their accusing glances and whispered words when they learned of his good deed. Did they see him as a hero, or did they only view him through their superstitions? He wanted to bridge the gap between their worlds but feared that his kindness might only deepen their distrust. In his heart, Tay felt a strong connection to nature and all its spirits, which guided him through life. This connection was part of who he was, and it shaped his identity as a Lakota boy. He longed for peace between the two groups, believing that understanding could transform fear into friendship. As he watched flames dance in front of him, Tay made a silent promise, to continue living by the values he cherished and to show others that kindness knows no boundaries. He hoped that one day, both sides could learn to see each other not as enemies but as fellow humans trying to navigate a harsh world together. In the days that followed the raising of the cross, both the Lakota tribe and the settlers found themselves grappling with heightened emotions and fear. The settlers believed they had taken a stand against darkness, yet the cross only deepened the divide. Some among them felt that their actions had alienated the Lakota further, sowing seeds of conflict rather than fostering peace. Meetings were held around flickering fires where settlers debated whether their protective symbol was truly justified or simply a misguided gesture. Meanwhile, the Lakota were in turmoil as well. Many felt angered and disrespected by the cross, seeing it as an intrusion on their sacred land. Tay's actions had been a beacon of kindness, but now they faced a new wave of suspicion from the settlers. While some tribal leaders called for patience and dialogue, others felt compelled to respond more fiercely against what they perceived as an affront to their beliefs. Despite the tension, small gestures of reconciliation began to emerge. A few brave settlers approached the Lakota camp, seeking to understand their way of life better. They offered gifts, food and tools, as signs of goodwill. In return, some Lakota individuals shared stories of their traditions and values, hoping to bridge the cultural gap. While these moments were fragile, they offered a glimmer of hope. Both communities recognized that lasting peace would require effort and understanding. As spring approached, there was a growing realization that healing could emerge from compassion, but it would take time and courage from both sides to truly overcome their differences. At the heart of this story are powerful themes that resonate deeply across cultures: compassion, misunderstanding, and the importance of empathy. Tay's courageous act of saving Sister Agnes serves as a shining example of how compassion can transcend cultural boundaries. His instinct to help, driven by the teachings of his elders, illustrates that kindness knows no limits, regardless of differing backgrounds or beliefs. However, the settlers' swift misinterpretation of Tay's actions reveals another critical theme: how misunderstandings can lead to conflict. Their fear of the unknown caused them to view the Lakota culture through a lens of superstition, labeling their practices as dark, while ignoring the humanity and kindness demonstrated by Tay. This knee-jerk reaction highlights how quickly fear can overshadow understanding, fostering division rather than connection. As tensions rise and a cross is erected, it becomes a tangible representation of misunderstanding and alienation. Instead of uniting the settlers in faith, it further separates them from the Lakota people they had already marginalized. The subsequent gestures of reconciliation mark a budding realization among both communities: true empathy involves seeking to understand one another's experiences and stories. The fragility of these efforts reminds us that healing requires patience and openness. It emphasizes that while cultural differences exist, shared values like compassion have the power to bring people together. As both groups navigate their complexities, they begin to learn that bridging divides is not just about overcoming misunderstandings but also about embracing the rich tapestry of humanity that connects them all. This story reflects broader historical tensions between Native American tribes and European settlers, showcasing a time when misunderstanding and fear often overshadowed compassion. The Lakota tribe's struggle for survival amidst harsh winter conditions parallels the settlers' quest for new opportunities, but their interactions reveal the complexities of cultural clashes. Tay's brave act of rescuing Sister Agnes symbolizes the potential for kindness to bridge divides, yet it also highlights how easily fear can distort perceptions and deepen conflict. The erection of the cross serves as a potent reminder of how symbols can be misinterpreted, reinforcing divisions rather than uniting people. This moment illustrates how history is often marked by tragic misunderstandings that lead to enduring animosities. However, the small gestures of reconciliation that emerge following these events offer a glimmer of hope. They demonstrate that amidst deep-seated fears and long-held prejudices, there exists a pathway toward understanding. As both communities begin to engage with one another, they illustrate that healing is possible through dialogue and empathy. The story encourages us to reflect on the importance of seeing beyond cultural differences and recognizing our shared humanity. While it does not shy away from depicting conflict, it ultimately emphasizes hope for cooperation and coexistence in a world that often feels divided. By embracing compassion and seeking to understand one another, both sides can begin to heal wounds, fostering a future where peace triumphs over fear.